Well, how's it going, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tyler's Reel Fishing. Today's episode is one that I'm super excited to bring to you guys. It's an instructional episode, and if it doesn't apply to you after you kind of watch a minute of it, I fully understand if you want to click out, but it's always good as anglers to learn about new ways to catch bass, even if it's not ways that we can apply directly now. I think if you don't have current, we're going to be talking about current today. If you don't have current in water bodies around you, it's still probably good for you guys to learn how this stuff works. That way, when you travel or when you go fish somewhere that has current, you are well equipped to catch those fish or catch those bass. And so I'm going to hand it off to my buddy Josh. He lives around here. We're kind of filming a Sweet Home Alabama tour, I call it, around the Coosa River. Really big spotted bass, as you'll probably see in the video that I put up, and they're really current oriented, and so we'll have water flowing out of one dam, flowing through the river and kind of bouncing around rocks, wood, and shorelines, and so these fish are really current oriented. If you don't know what that means, we're going to talk about it in today's video, but it's getting sunny. Let's hop over to Josh and he'll tell you about it.
What's up, guys? As Tyler said, we're here on the Coosa River and we're targeting spotted bass. That's mainly what we have. And spotted bass is a current-oriented fish. Largemouth getting current, but spotted bass, if they don't have current, they spin in 80 feet of water and they're really hard to catch. So we really love current because it makes our days a lot better. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I approach these eddies. There's really two kind of presentations. You can mix up different baits in there. I like a slow presentation on one. I really like a jig this time of year. We've had a full moon, crawfish are out, so a jig is shining today for us. And then I like a moving bait. Some of my buddies are gonna kill me for this, but a scrounger is a spotted bass's worst enemy. You can use a small fluke or a big fluke. Doesn't really matter, but you can always use spinner baits, chatter baits, just kind of depends on the water clarity, something that's moving. We got a shad style and we got a crawfish style. That's basically what I like to stick with. So we're fishing stuff that's very visible right here. And I'll talk a little bit more about the stuff that you can't see, but right now this is the easiest way to break it down. So when I come up to a rock pile like this that is standing out of the water a couple of feet, my first cast, I do not want to get right up and flip and try to flip the rock, even though you think, because that rock comes out a lot further. And you have the slack water right behind the rock while the current's going around it. I like to cast my jig kind of keep it a couple feet off the rock, and you'll feel rocks underneath it. And a lot of times they're sitting there, they're feeding on, and they'll be feeding on crawfish that are sitting in there. But if they're on a shad pattern, a lot of times they're sitting in there. My theory is they're resting instead of sitting right on the edge of the eddy where they're having to work so hard. They can't hold in it all day. And so I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna fish that with a jig, just kind of hop it around a little bit. And then I'm gonna pick up my other rod, my moving rod, and I'm gonna throw it kind of in the quicker stuff. And I want to be always facing up current. If you're ever fishing a river system, you always want to face up current, and you want to bring it back kind of slowly where you can just barely feel it thumping. The bait is always going to come downriver. It always comes downriver, and when it's really rough current, sometimes it's really hard to fish a moving bait like that, but it's just really good. And that's why I love the scrounger, is because it has some vibration to it, and I think it helps the fish find it better in really rough current than just a regular old small swim bait or something like that. That's where I think the scrounger shines. So here we're at a really obvious current eddy right here, made by a rock. It's a little bit slower, there is swifter current. We're here for filming purposes. And so my first cast is I'm gonna fish with a jig, and I'm gonna come up here and I'm gonna go a couple feet from the rock, just not right on top of them, and feel if there's more rocks coming out, where they're just sitting in this eddy, either eating on crawfish or resting. And I'm gonna do that several times, kind of pick it apart. You know, really the retrieve, you just kind of got to play with it a little bit, see which way they want it. And then I'm gonna make a little cast. As you can see right here, where the current's coming around, there's still a really little bit before the current hits it, right on the edge of that rock right there. And it's not going to take your jig right off, but sometimes you'll have one sitting right there waiting for something to come sweeping down the current. And that's how I'm going to start with a rock, start with a jig. I like to start slow first, and then after I've done that, I'm always, today it was a jig bite behind the rocks, but sometimes when they're on the shad, I like to have two approaches. So my second approach, and I'm gonna go more to the current side, and I'm gonna fish it in the current. I'm gonna hit it right there, right on the edge. And I'm gonna bring it down, and I'm just gonna slow reel it and feel it just barely where I can feel it thumping. And on these scroungers, a lot of times with these current fish, I've seen this with spotted bass and heard of it with smallmouth. I'm not a smallmouth angler. A lot of times, and Tyler can tell you from experience, they'll hit it 2 or 3 times before they really get it. So you don't always want to jerk as soon as you feel it. You just want to bring the scrounger back and feel it, and then when they hit it, you kind of just set into it like a crankbait. A little bit harder than a crankbait. But that's basically all there is to fishing current like that one. Oh man.
Oh, you had a bite?
Yeah. There's really not a whole lot to fishing current. Keep it simple. Shad pattern and then a crawfish pattern. You can also fish a curly-tailed worm or a spook or something like that. You just kind of got to play with it to see what the fish want that day. But I prefer to keep it stupid simple and just kind of colors aren't a big deal. Just kind of figure out where we're going. A little bit of what was going on today, why they were where they were today. We just had a full moon about a week ago, so the crawfish started coming out very well. And the crawfish can't hold in the really, really swift currents. Eddies like this where they still have current, they weren't in the dead stuff behind these rocks. They were in this stuff where there was still some current, but the crawfish can hold in there. That's what I believe is why the fish were there. And they were shallow. The fish were ridiculously more shallow than you would think. And they were up there feeding on crawfish, and that's where, of course, a jig shines. So a little bit about what current and really what it is and why fish set up the way I've explained that they do is because fish can't stay in the really swift current all day. They will, and you'll catch some in it sometimes, but the eddies, they want an attack spot. They want a spot where they can just rest and kind of wait for something to come by. And then when something comes by, they can jump out and get it real quick. They don't have the energy to stay in it all day long. And you'll have usually the fish that are more in the actual current, they're actively feeding. You put something in front of them, they're gonna eat it. But the ones that are staying off, they're a lot of times resting. And so that's why you have to find an eddy. You can't just have a river with current flowing by and just think cast straight into the current. I've tried it. You're wasting your time. You got to find the eddies where it breaks, where they can go and they can attack and get very easy, because it's all about the easiest path. And they don't want to work so hard because they can't do it. And that's really all there is to fishing current. It's very simple. Look for eddies. Test a really fast current behind eddies. You'll find very active feeding fish there. But also test some of the slower stuff where there's slower current, but there's still a little bit of an eddy forming. Keep it simple. Fish a moving bait and fish a slow bait. And don't approach it too fast. Stay off of it a little bit, because you'll be surprised at what you can do. And then, as always, if you want to be a hammer, find the offshore current eddies, and you'll beat everybody. So one thing when I'm fishing a jig, even though I'm fishing a lot of times slower water, sometimes you will fish it in the moving water a little bit, and it's going to be drifting, obviously. Well, the number one mistake is you do want it bumping on the rocks, but you have to keep your line tight. If you turn around, text your girlfriend, play Fortnite on your phone or something, it's gonna sit there and it will wedge up under a rock and get you very stuck. So you've got to keep your line tight. And also, because if a fish does hit it and you have slack line, you won't hook them. But if you keep your line tight, you're gonna feel every single rock that's bumping. And as you feel it bumping, I'm gonna sit there, I'm gonna keep my line tight, and I want it bumping the rocks, drifting just like a crawfish would if it got caught in the current. And when that's happening, when I start feeling a very consistent you're about to get hung, in my experience. So when I start feeling it go boom, 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 I'm gonna just give it a pop and just get it off a little bit. And then I want it to feel, when I feel it start ticking the rocks again, pop. I don't believe that's so much triggering the bites as much as it could be, but I feel it's more of keeping me from losing so many jigs. And also it is a natural presentation. Because when a crawfish, if you do see him swim, he's gonna sit there and he's gonna jerk up. He's gonna jerk up. He doesn't swim all gracefully. And he's very spastic movements. So just remember, keep your line tight. When you start feeling really, really consistent bumping, you're more than likely gonna get hung when you're in bigger chunk rock like this. The bite, a lot of times, sometimes if they're with the current, you're just gonna feel it heavy and it's just gonna go down current, and it's just going to be moving faster. It's just not going to feel like current. It's not going to feel right. But sometimes you're going to feel a solid boom, And a lot of times in current, if we're like we are right here while we're facing up, Tyler dealt with this today, they're gonna swim straight towards you. So don't give up all the time. Sometimes you're gonna feel that thunk and you gotta reel really fast, and then you'll feel the fish, and then you set the hook, and then you really gotta keep up with them. I highly suggest a high-speed reel, a 7:1 gear ratio reel for fishing current, because you really have to catch up with these fish a lot of times, not only on your hook sets, but when they're coming to you. Current fish are mean. They're strong, they're fast, they're gonna bulldog you. They live in this stuff and stuff worse every single day. And so you really have to make sure that you have gear that can keep up with them.
So that is all that Josh and I have for you guys in the instructional today. Of course, the gear that I use for jig fishing is usually a 7.3 to a 7-foot, medium heavy or heavy loose rod with a, as he mentioned, a high gear ratio reel. Now, you can fish it on a 6.3-to-1 or 6.8-to-1, but anything in the 7 to 8 range is usually better for fishing jigs and current, because those fish are gonna nail the jig or nail the scrounger, shad imitation, and they're gonna take off down current. And oftentimes, if you don't have a high-speed gear ratio to kind of pull up that slack line, you're gonna lose that fish because he's gonna spit it out. And so, very, very important. Fishing current is definitely one of my favorite things to do, though. I absolutely love fishing current, and fishing in the Coosa River with a buddy like Josh is awesome. So make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Let me know if you want to see more instructional content like this. I love teaching you guys not just how to fish a Senko, how to throw a spinnerbait. Those things are, I wouldn't say they're easy for a beginner, but I'd say they're definitely more, you know, more beginner style applications. But stuff like this, fishing in current in a crazy river, is definitely something that I want you guys to be able to learn from as well. So if you guys haven't subscribed, we'll see you next time. And of course, if you follow our tips,
You'll catch a spotopotamus.
Spotopotamus! Brilliant. See y'all.